Hello, everyone. Welcome to ESafety Day. My name's Matt Warren, and I'm the Director of the RMIT Centre for Cybersecurity Research and Innovation. And in terms of today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about ESafety in the context of the cyber of today's special events, and also talking about the work of the ESafety Commissioner and how that relates to universities, as well as to young people and the population in general, and then talk a little bit about some of the background of the project that our KIC students have been working with the ESafety Commissioner. So I'll give a little bit of the background of that sort of key project that the ESafety Commissioner has been working on to raise awareness about cyber safety within the university sector, and that would be a good segue into our student guests, who will talk about the work they did with the Cloud Innovation Centre, the KIC, with the ESafety Commissioner. So today is Safer Internet Day. So Safer Internet Day is an annual event. It's also a global event. So all around the world, these sorts of activities, seminars, launches, discussions are happening about cyber safety and how to make the internet safer for everyone to use. So it's a global celebration about the technology that we're using in terms of how the internet has transformed society and has transformed many of our day-to-day business interactions and personal interactions, and it's a focus on how children and young people can use the internet responsibly in a sort of successful manner. And the ESafety Commissioner also, as part of today, is launching a range of new activities and online resources for young people to be aware of cyber safety. But in terms of my presentation today, I'm going to talk about cyber safety really from the university perspective, and as I said, I'll be touching upon the materials that the ESafety Commissioner has developed to help universities promote cyber safety, raise awareness amongst students about cyber safety, and also raising awareness amongst academics about cyber safety. So I'll be talking about that after a short video.
I'm so pleased to be part of Safer Internet Day in 2021. It's important. It's a day when we reflect on what we're all doing to keep Australians safe online, particularly our vulnerable, and how we can make the internet a safer and better place for everyone. In the course of just one generation, the internet has transformed our own lives and that of the world in which we live. We now, of course, have within our hands access to more knowledge and facts than at any other time in human history, but that has come with many other downsides: cyberbullying, cybercrime, identity theft, abuse, and so much more that are faced by Australians of every age and every background. None of this, though, has slowed during the pandemic either. In fact, we've seen a 35% increase in youth-based cyberbullying and a 130% increase in image-based abuse reports. As a father, I can't tell you how much that upsets me. They're numbers we can't ignore, and we're not. The ESafety Commissioner, Julie Inman-Grant, is doing an absolutely tremendous job working and engaging with communities, with schools, with parents and individuals, helping to keep us all safe. She gives me a lot of confidence in the work that she does. With a funding boost of close to $50 million over 3 years, my government is supporting the Commissioner's efforts to keep everyone safe online. It's very important to us. We're underpinning the investment with new laws to push back against those online abuses. And we are setting requirements for digital platforms, the big companies, to keep their users safe, addressing the abuse of adults online as well, and reducing the amount of time harmful content can stay up online. We want it taken down. But beyond changing the law, every one of us also has a responsibility to make the internet safer. You know, Australia has a great reputation as the most successful, cohesive, multicultural nation on earth. Mostly, we treat each other like we ourselves would like to be treated. We're fair people in Australia. We're accepting and we're good-natured. And that's what we have to do online as well. And mostly we do, but we can do a lot more. All of us have to be the same people online as we are offline. The rules for the digital world have to be the same as what they are in the real world. Treating others online the way we would like to be treated if we were meeting face to face in a real world setting. There's a lot of work to do to get to this point, and my hope is that the good, decent and safe people we are offline will be the same online in the future. So thanks for inviting me to be part of Safer Internet Day, and I encourage you to visit esafety.gov.au for more information how we can keep all Australians safe online and to keep you safe online.
We had a message there from our Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, really enforcing the strong support the government has around cyber safety. So Australia's actually one of the few countries in the world that has a dedicated ESafety Commission that looks after our interactions online and offers advice and protections. And many countries are actually looking to Australia as a model to develop, as a model to copy and replicate as they develop their own e-safety activities within their own country. So the Office of the ESafety Commissioner is there to help all Australians, whether you're young, a student, an adult, or part of a vulnerable part of our society like the elderly. And it's really there to promote education, advice on how to stay safe online. And it also provides a support mechanism. So if young people find themselves victims of cyberbullying, they can report that to the ESafety Commissioner, and they will act as an advocate for that young person to solve that situation. So in many cases, the ESafety Commissioner will work with social media platform providers to close down sites or close down content to diffuse this situation. And as part of 2021 Safer Internet Day, the ESafety Commissioner is coordinating events all across Australia, and you'll see many posts on social media about this tonight. And the ESafety Commissioner herself, is going to be on TikTok tonight, taking questions about cyber safety. So what is cyber abuse? Well, cyber abuse is behavior that uses technology. So that technology, could be a laptop, it could be, a mobile device, to threaten, intimidate, harass, or humiliate someone. So again, it's using the technology as a mechanism to abuse another person, and it can take place on social media sites like Facebook or Twitter, through online chat or messaging services, through text messages, emails, or even in public forums. So there's many different ways that cyber abuse can occur, and when we use those particular technologies or particular platforms. We just have to be aware that there is this potential, that people can post information on those channels, technologies that will upset people, would threaten people, would humiliate people. So having that awareness is very important about what cyber abuse is. So some examples of cyber abuse could be sharing intimate or sexual photos of people, without consent. This is often known as image-based abuse. And the ESafety Commissioner has on their website a lot of information about this, on how to deal with it, how to report it if it occurs. It could be target or persistent personal attacks at individuals that aims to insult or humiliate them based on someone's appearance, religion, gender, political beliefs. And this is referred to as online hate, which is when an individual is attacked. And again, on the ESafety Commission site, they have a lot of information on online hate and how to deal with that. In many cases, it's the role of the providers of those social media platforms and messaging services to remove the content, and the ESafety Commissioner provides a lot of information on how you can report it, but also ask the ESafety Commissioner to act on your behalf. Other examples of cyber abuse is encouraging people to self-harm. It could be in terms of social media, posting offensive or shocking materials in terms of memorial or tribute pages. So again, it's relating, to that, trying to ridicule or, insulting individuals. So there's many different avenues and areas that cyber abuse can occur. In terms of a work context, it could be sending obscene messages to a person, their family, friends, or work colleagues. It could be, manipulating images that are not of you, but they take a picture of yourself and put it on another photo. It could be sharing personal information about yourself on social media. It could be, posting your details of, where you live or where you work. So people, may result in strange calls, from strangers that you don't know. Threatening violence or inciting others to do the same. Or stalking a person online and trying to hack into people's email accounts or social media accounts or bank accounts. And this is, commonly referred to as cyber stalking. So within the ESafety Commissioner's website, they have a lot of information that actually describes the different types of cyber abuse that can occur, but also the measures you can take as an individual to help protect against those cyber abuse. And here we have the website ESafety.gov report adult cyber abuse. And what you're offered here is advice on how to mitigate that abusive behavior, report the abuse to the providers of that information, whether that's Facebook, Twitter, etc. And if Facebook and Twitter doesn't do anything about that content, you can report it to ESafety Commissioner, and they will act as advocates and work on your behalf with those platform providers to remove that content. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, I was, really wanting to talk about the work that the the ESafety Commissioner has been doing with universities. So in 2020, the Office of the ESafety Commissioner partnered with Universities Australia to develop toolkits to help to deal with cyber abuse at universities. So the toolkits that they developed was to actually raise awareness of cyber safety at universities. So cyber safety, as we saw at the very beginning, is very different, for instance, for cybersecurity. So it's raising that awareness amongst staff, amongst students, amongst administrators of universities. More importantly, providing guidance on how to prepare and deal with these online safety incidents, and we'll touch upon that in a moment, and also provide student and staff well-being. So one of the key aspects that the ESafety Commissioner offers is advice, is that you don't feel alone when a situation has happened, because these situations may have happened many times before, and the ESafety Commissioner has on their website a lot of information about those sorts of situations, where to get advice, where to get help, where to mitigate those incidences. So what the ESafety Commissioner did was that they developed a toolkit for universities. And what these was a number of static documents, a number of static guides. And this is where our KIC students in a moment will be talking about their experiences on developing those and taking the information from those static guides and putting them into more sort of interactive systems. So the toolkits that were developed were for 3 key audiences: students. So importantly, how students can deal with cyber safety issues that they find themselves involved with, links to where to get advice, and additional background information. Also information for academics, because students would come to academics as sort of trusted individuals and explain to them about the situation that they find themselves in. So for the academics, it provides information about what cyber safety is, the areas that and the forms of cyber safety and cyber abuse that can occur, and the steps that academics can take in terms of providing information to the students to get advice, or where to get advice within the university on how to deal with the situation. And the final toolkit is actually for universities, and it describes how universities deal with cyber safety as a whole of organization perspective. And as I said, our students will be talking about this more in due course. So in terms of the academic toolkits, they've developed guides just for academics. So it talks about what online safety is, what cyber abuse is, talks about online safety advice for women. It talks about staff use of social media and digital platforms. It talks about, as I was mentioning, about when an incident occurs involving a student, how to help those students resolve that situation, and the safe use of online collaboration tools. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that aspect because it's an area, because of the current situation with COVID, that many of us are using a number of collaborative tools, whether they're collaborative tools such as Teams or collaborative workspaces, that we work with our colleagues and work with our students, to share information. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of those online collaborative tools and the advice that the Office of the ESafety Commissioner gives for academics regarding the use of those tools and issues that we should be aware of. So again, the advice that they give to academics is for academics themselves, but also for students who are using those platforms as part of sort of classroom activities. So one a key aspect is that students shouldn't share too much information. A collaborative tool isn't the same as a social media site like Facebook. So it isn't okay to post pictures of what you did Saturday night in a collaborative tool. Academics should be very aware of the content that's being posted by students amongst themselves, that there aren't any messages that are being posted that would be considered offensive or hurtful. And if they do come across such messages, to know how to deal with it in terms of removing that content, to talk to the students involved, or to escalate it if the need arises. Making sure that inappropriate images aren't posted via sort of collaborative sites. So in terms of academics and also students who use these sites, protecting your own personal information. So again, where possible, don't post details of where you live, for instance, or your account details. Remember, to set strong passwords or use MFA, which is multi-factor authentication, which is where, for instance, when you log into a system, you type in your username and you then get text to code that you also have to type in. So it means if someone's compromised your login and has access to your password, they still can't log into your account because they need that extra code. Now, multi-factor authentication is a technology that's available on so many platforms, whether it's social media, whether it's your banking apps, whether it's email services, but many people don't turn them on because they don't want the hassle of spending a few extra seconds reading that code and typing in that code. Make sure when you finish your class that you sign out of the class, that you sign out of the platform, so no one can come on to your computer afterwards and assume your sort of online identity in that system. Be mindful of the content that you're posting on online platforms. So when you're in a home context, remember to mute your microphone. So even though your camera isn't on, if your microphone is on, people as part of that collaborative core can hear a conversation. So it may be a personal conversation that's occurring at home that you don't want the rest of your class or your students to hear. Think about the visual information when you're using video conference systems like Teams, that you don't have information that can sort of identify where you live, or personal information about such as letters pinned on a pinboard behind you that people could zoom into. So remember to blur the background or use black backgrounds such as the one I'm using today, that has the message for the event today. So even when we use these collaborative tools, what we have to be aware is when we use these technologies that there's always a number of cyber safety considerations that we have to take on board, whether it is us as academics or whether it is our students who are using those platforms. So if you want to find out more information about the University Toolkit, I've put the web link there. To be honest, that they are excellent resources. Whether you're an academic, a student, or involved, in running of universities, they provide a lot of detailed information on, the importance of cyber safety in a university context, and the steps of you as an individual, as part of the organization, needs to take, to identify, when cyber safety issues occur, and how to deal with those situations when you come across them. Okay, I'll pass over for some questions. I know we have just a little time for any questions that people may have. So I've got one question. Which universities in Australia are globally recognized in addressing these issues? That's a very good question. To be honest, the issue around awareness is actually making sure that we're having events like this, that we're talking about cyber safety. So I wouldn't necessarily focus on who's doing the best, but focus on the institutions that aren't talking about cyber safety or issues of cyber abuse in a sort of a classroom situation. So one of the aspects that the Office of the ESafety Commission want to do is raise awareness in the whole sector. So it means that there's no one left behind who, aren't aware, around cyber safety. So there aren't students who aren't aware of what the issues are. Some more questions. Are there issues that need to be further considered that deal with a more hybrid working of teaching as we go virtual? That's a great question. So it's an interesting one, because the boundaries between work and non-work have become very blurred. So so we're using the same platforms for our teaching in terms of Teams or Zoom. Also, we're using the same platforms in social context, catching up with friends. The other sort of issue is, people, take information out of their work context and store it, in, their own personal computers. So again, you've got that situation that information and data goes from the work environment into a non-work environment. You've also now got, the impact in the hybrid model around mobile technologies, that many of the apps, the systems we're now using, are on our mobile devices. I bet many of you here today actually aren't here on your laptop. You're here on a tablet or a mobile device listening in. So it means that there's a lot of changes in the boundaries and the technologies that we use. And at the beginning, as I sort of mentioned about what is cyber abuse, that issue around platforms, becomes very important, because you have to be aware, that you're using these different platforms, and those platforms have, different types of vulnerabilities in them. So for instance, if you're using, let's say, an Android phone, do you have malware checking to stop malware or device systems being installed on your computer? So again, some very basic steps that can be taken, and in many cases those steps aren't taken. So another question, how best can we support academic staff on cyber safety? They already are doing a lot of teaching and research. So again, a great question. Certainly it's the role of institutions, universities, to provide advice for students and staff around cyber safety, to be able to provide them, that information. The great work that the Safety Commissioner has done regarding these guides is a great first step, and really that also leads in to our students who I'll be introducing, who will be talking next, who have developed a number of systems that have translated those guides into alternative support mechanisms that translates that information into a much easier sort of format. I'll take the final question. Is there a business organization banking on cyber safety? No, there isn't. And partly one of the reasons for that is businesses are very focused on cyber security. They're not focused on cyber safety. So again, that's a very interesting question to have further, is how businesses, deal with cyber safety from their staff perspective. I may just sort of pass on now because I'm aware of the time. So we had a question on where can staff find information on social media sites and apps that are acceptable to RMIT. So the issue isn't about acceptability, it's about the use of those technologies in different contexts. So what we'll be doing after the event is sharing information from the ESafety Commissioner in terms of general information around cyber safety, but also around the toolkits around for academics, which includes that toolkit around social media sites. So I think that would be a very useful toolkit for you to look at and work through. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, and for Matt. And anyone else who has questions, we really encourage you to throw them in the chat, and we can hopefully address some of them at the end or get back to you. That was really informative, and I really look forward to moving now into the next section of this event, which is going to be kicked off by Matt Salier, who is the director of the RMIT Activator, and as LinkedIn puts it, the heart of entrepreneurship at RMIT University. So he'll talk a little bit about the Cloud Innovation Centre, and we'll go from there. Matt, over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kyra, and thanks, Matt. And we should note, Matt and I always like to be both on the same webinar just to confuse things. But that was, as always, every time I hear Matt talk about these sorts of issues around cyber, you learn something, something new each time. So thanks very much. So the Cloud Innovation Centre, the RMIT Cyber Ready Cloud Innovation Centre, is a collaboration with AWS, Amazon Web Services. There's 12 of these around the world, and it's really our effort at RMIT to really galvanise how we build up that cyber readiness, that resilience around cybersecurity, really broadly across the university and the community. We talk a lot about cradle to grave. How do we help primary schools and high school students and their teachers and parents understand all the way through to aged care facilities? So there's a big task there. The slide you can see on the screen is the process we go through, and there's a lot of elements to the KIC program, and the students will talk specifically about their experiences in a moment. But really, there's this opportunity to, as you can see in this codified pathway here, to really explore and be curious about where some of the big gaps in knowledge might be, or the gaps in practice might be. That moves into really where the AWS I guess innovation methodology comes into its own, and our students at RMIT that have gone through these KIC challenges start to work very closely with the digital innovation team at AWS and a lead that we have as part of the RMIT Cyber Ready KIC to start to think about identifying that customer problem very deeply and really frame the challenge in the problem statement very closely. With ESafety, as we heard, that was really about finding better ways to get these amazing resources out and be used more by larger groups of people. That moves into a deep dive phase, and that includes the very Amazon process of working backwards, and that process really starts with a vision of the future state. They talk about developing a press release and a frequently asked questions sheet, what we colloquially call the PR FAQs, and the students work through that process by articulating when this solution is developed, what some of the things that they want to celebrate are in the press release and what some of the questions might be that they need to address. So that process is really a deep investigation of the problem and how the solution fits that, a very core element of any innovation process. And of course, the unique thing about partnering with AWS is then we're able to move into a build stage, into a prototyping, often technical solutions, to start to address creating a prototype of the technical solution. And so that build stage, that we go through solution workshops, we prototype, we're able to use the AWS cloud infrastructure to build that, and an amazing array of applications available to for us for that purpose. And that, of course, then goes back to refining that, as I said, the press release and the FAQs, the PR FAQ, to be really tight for the client, in this case, the ESafety Commissioner. And then our job as the RMIT Cyber Ready KIC, the Cloud Innovation Centre, is really then to explore how, with the ESafety Commissioner in this example and other customers and clients we have, how do we scale that? How do we make this commercially viable? So the students get this amazingly deep experience. They go through an innovation process that's underpinned a company like Amazon globally, which is no small thing, but they also work deeply with an industry partner to understand what it looks like to then scale and commercialize this into the market to really have the effect that we want. So an amazing process where we launched the KIC in mid last year, so really challenging time to get cracking. However, we are really starting to scale that now. So we've had a challenge over summer, and we're just about to hear from some students about that experience. And we're looking for those additional students to feed into the process. And pipeline challenges really are focused on leveling up our cyber resilience and our cyber readiness. So, Kaya, I think that's enough for me. I reckon the best advocates are the students that have been a part of this. So I think we've got some students to talk to as well, right?
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And thank you for the segue into extending a very warm welcome to 3 student guests who are joining us. We've got Jovin Elsa Jacob, Tracy Tam, and James Boubert, who are all here to talk about their experience working in the Cloud Innovation Centre. And if we've got them all on video, I'd love to give them a quick hello and then jump into some questions for them.
Hello.
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 Hello, welcome. Pleasure to have you here. Thanks so much for being here. I'm going to ask each of you sort of consecutively my first question, which is, could you please briefly introduce yourself and then talk a little bit about the program that you were in the Cloud Innovation Centre, maybe starting with Jovin.
Thanks, Kaya. I am Jovin, and I'm in my final year doing Master of Cybersecurity. That is, I have one more semester to go to finish my Master of Cybersecurity course. I was part of the project where we were working together with the ESafety Commissioner team, the AWS team, and the RMIT CIC team to prevent online harm amongst youngsters and university students. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's awesome. James, how about you next?
Yeah, so my name's James. I'm doing a research master's in mathematics with the sort of side area of cybersecurity. I was part of the challenge, the same one, working with eSafety and AWS, working to try and get that information that we were talking about and making it more accessible and more available and more known to be there. I believe it was called the Cyber Innovation Challenge program, was the actual one that I was a part of. And I was also in a team with Tracy, doing the same project.
There you go. Well, Tracy, please expand on who you are and the project from your lens.
No worries. So my name is Tracy. I'm a doctoral candidate within the School of Science, doing research into cybersecurity within small businesses. So I was within the same cohort as Jovin and James, basically looking at ways to be able to support university students either after they have experienced a cyber harm incident or have equipped them with the tools if they were more curious in finding out on whether they want to help somebody or whether they can prevent cyber harm to start off with.
Thank you so much for that. And I guess that leads into a really good next question. And Tracy, perhaps you can talk with that. What was your experience working on this particular project, and what were the sort of outcomes that you came away with?
So we worked in teams. So as James mentioned before, we were working on the same team. But basically, we started off, as Matt said, working with AWS, working backwards process. And what that meant was basically having ESafety put together a press release to say, look, this solution addresses this particular needs and problems that we are having right now, and how this particular tool will benefit the customers, which in this case obviously is university students. And then all the teams that was involved in the Kick Challenge basically took that away, and we did quite a few rounds of brainstorming, giving sort of dissecting that into what's called user stories, which is basically how we expect the users to be able to use this particular tool or this particular solution. And once we had those user stories, we then went through a process of picking the parts that we think that will be most beneficial to prototype. I guess one important thing is to highlight is throughout this whole process, we were doing this in a very supported environment. So we weren't doing this in isolation. It's not like a school assignment where you take it away and you come back with a finished product. We had Kick, we had AWS, and we had ESafety people there that we could bounce our ideas off, that we could refine our ideas, which for our particular team anyway, ended up with a few ideas that sort of didn't quite hit the mark. So we were able to get that feedback early on in the process before we sort of spent too much time on them.
And I guess I was just jumping in there. I think that's a great point, Tracy. Jovin, I wonder if that was the same experience that you had. Obviously you're all have some broadly technical paths that you're on, but obviously this challenge sort of straddled a few different elements of that. What was unique for you, or what did you feel you learned that you weren't expecting by going through that process?
Yeah, for me, again, the process was the same as Tracy mentioned, but a few things that I would like to highlight is we were focusing on building a website that is easy to access for the users and also convenient for the users, considering the state of mind of the user after experiencing a negative experience online. So building the prototype was definitely an experience, but what intrigued me more was the process we undertook to arrive at the prototype. As Tracy mentioned, we had the PRFAQ, going through the PRFAQ document, then the solution workshops, then creating visuals, understanding the requirement very clearly. So all this led to the success of building the prototype. And we were again focusing on few functionalities like having the website in several languages so that users from different backgrounds are able to access the website in the language they are comfortable with. And we also had a game form of interaction so that users are comfortable answering questions and obtaining advices. And we also tried to represent the statistical information that was quite theoretical on the website. So we tried to represent them in graphical form so that it is more engaging to view. Yeah, so all those things we tried to implement in our website.
Yeah, and James, I think I was really intrigued to see your project use QR codes, and obviously QR codes in the last little while have had a real resurgence. They've sort of found their place in the world, but of course there's also some risks around QR codes and the perhaps fragility of disingenuous use of them. So how did you sort of arrive at that solution? How did you think about the technical elements of that prototype, and what do you think the next stages could be if this goes to sort of a commercial, productization process?
Yeah, well, I think there's definitely some work to be done around ensuring the QR codes are safe or recognizable, so you can tell like a genuine one from a fake one, just like you can with you see around banking emails and banking text and that kind of stuff. Spotting a fake email, a phishing email. There'll be similar work to be done around the QR codes. So what was one of the other points you were asking about? Going forward, what's next? So for our app, I think we got we got to like a mildly working prototype. I think there's a bit more work to be done on the technical side to sort of flesh out where we got up to. I think one of the things to look at would be maybe looking at one thing eSafety wanted, and one thing we wanted to introduce would be sort of tracking data. But one issue you run into around tracking data is you want to make sure it's anonymized, especially in incidents like this. You want to ensure that the end users, you're not tracking any identifiable information. You just kind of want to track what information are people looking for, what are people finding the most useful. But you want to do that in a way that's not going to, sort of reveal or have any identifiable information left in there, which I think is probably one of the challenges going forward for that.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really insightful answer, James. And I appreciate that as someone who's constantly terrified of scanning a QR code and finding out that I've been hacked. Yeah, I was gonna say phished, but not quite the right context there.
The short links are also the other threat vector that is obviously jumping up into the common understanding as well. So that ability to keep on top of where society is starting to use other technologies more ubiquitously and how to adapt it. That's one of the ESafety Commissioner's objectives, I suppose. So that's really critical to keep on top of those trends and address through those solutions problems that might emerge. Kai, sorry.
Yeah. Well, and to add to that, just these paradigms that we're working in are so complex, and they're not just about the evolving technology, but also about human relationships and the ways in which social engineering plays a part in the ways in which we interact and transact with one another in this new environment plays a part. So Tracy, I'm curious, from your perspective, what does innovation in cybersecurity really mean and look like from your perspective?
Yeah, I think you put it very nicely. I think innovation in cybersecurity to me means looking beyond the technology, looking across the multiple disciplines that to arrive at a solution that actually works better for the end user, because ultimately we're trying to protect the end users here. And I mean, after all, really, cybersecurity is an encompassing area that range from the sophisticated technical attacks that we were talking about before, or just as Matt say, it could be tricking you into by social engineering into scanning a code that really you shouldn't be scanning. So I think keeping innovative in cybersecurity is important to have in mind that we need to look at all the aspects that feeds into cybersecurity problem, as opposed to sort of just focusing in on a single technical solution or a single human policy-based solutions.
And I guess, one of the interesting things about these challenges, of course, is that you tend to find yourself going into spaces that you weren't anticipating from that's the nature of a client-led or a market-led problem experience. So I wondered, Jovin, what was something that you learned or something that you worked through that you hadn't expected, that sort of something you've taken away to fold into your journey in the cybersecurity space going forward?
One thing that I had not expected was the problem statement itself. Like the statement itself was a new thing because we have to think from the user's perspective. We have to empathize with the victims and then come up with a solution. So and then the way our team also brainstormed into coming up with innovative ideas. So I think that was overall a very good experience and something new. Yeah, building a website and things like that was quite new for me. So yeah.
How about you, James? Similar sort of thing. I know we often endeavour to get really cross-disciplinary teams, and I think we had a cross-disciplinary cohort. Perhaps some of the teams were more tightly packed in terms of their capabilities, but did you find a similar experience for you?
What specific experience were you talking about there? Sorry.
That you had exposure to different ways of thinking, different disciplines that changed the way that you might have approached that type of problem because of the process.
Yeah. There was definitely a very strong emphasis on the sort of the human factor in the thing, both the end users, and then one of the things we looked at in our project was the end users at ESafety. So ESafety, who have to manage this app and website, aren't necessarily going to have a technical background. So you also need to build a back end for them to manage, the various resources that are being provided, the various links to, which resources best linked to which incident, and things similar to that. So the human factor was something that I hadn't really sort of dealt with before in a problem like this. A lot of the time in projects that you're doing, especially in mathematics, it's very like, here is your problem, solve the equation, go. But when you're dealing with cybersecurity, you have to consider the human factor. And I think this is something that, what today is about as well, when we're talking about, Internet Safety Day, we're talking about, largely it's a focus on educating youth. But education in general, I think, is something that we need more of in cybersecurity for the general populace. Like, I'd like to see something like, when you sign up for a new job, you always go through your H&S, you always go through your HR and all that kind of stuff. As part of that package, there should be a cybersecurity thing there. And a lot of these skills that we use in cybersecurity are very closely related to what you'd use for your own cyber safety. So, the more education we get out there, the better it's going to be for everyone.
Yeah, it's a great observation. We often find ourselves, Matt and I, the KIC team, talking about those ends of the spectrum, sort of the technology bits and bytes, mathematical coding, all the way through to the human behavioural policy setting, education, and everything in between, and finding the way to again bring processes around bringing those parts of the world together is really important. And I'm really pleased that you felt that through the experience. That's one of the things we aim for. So that's great. Yeah.
We learned that humans are messy. That's good. And speaking of education, before we open it up to any questions in the chat, I just have one last question for each of you, and maybe we'll start with Jovin. If you had to pick one thing, one takeaway or one fact, or just something important about either cybersecurity or safety, ESafety, that the public should know, what would that be? What would you tell us?
I think I would say don't judge too quickly. Just because somebody has been in a situation, you just don't judge that person so easily. That person may have been in a different situation. And that is what we have learned from the problem statement here, that we have to empathize with the victims and be in their shoes and see how it feels like. That is my take from this project. Yes.
That's a great point, especially as a lot of these, a lot of those scams prey on it. Yeah, I hear that, and I've definitely been scammed before. So, and I work in cybersecurity. What about you? Is there a fact, a takeaway, something you'd like the public to know that you'd like to share?
How was that to me? Sorry, it dropped out for a second, the audio.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think the takeaway is that I think the big one is like being responsible for yourself, like understanding that you're going to have to educate yourself in some of these areas, and that's important to do, and it's difficult to do, especially if you're coming from a non-technical background. If you're, not someone who's interested in computing and all the cyber sort of stuff at all, it can be very intimidating. But I think educating yourself and understanding that a lot of sort of cybersecurity is very similar to like classical physical security. So, not sharing your key to your front door with someone. It's the same as not sharing your password, just little things like that, and drawing the parallels so people can get a better understanding of how best to take care of their own cybersecurity.
Fantastic. You're all coming to teach a seminar at Activator, that's for sure.
That's right.
And I see we have a question in the chat already, but Tammy, Tracy, would you mind bringing us home with your own takeaway?
No worries. I guess from a person who's already doing research in cybersecurity area, I guess one takeaway or one comforting factor that I've discovered through this process is I think as a whole, the government is very aware of the problem that everybody is using the internet is facing today. So it's actually very encouraging to see the depth of material that eSafety already has on the website. What we were trying to add value to is just to make it, easier to discover they have today. So I think either as a victim or as somebody who's trying to support a victim, keep looking to those official advice sites, especially eSafety in this case, because the information you're looking for, the support you're looking for is in there somewhere, and don't give up because there are people and organisations that are actively looking to help you guys to do this.
Yeah, it's a great takeaway. And I know we've only got 90 seconds left. A quick question. I don't know who wants to grab it. What advice would you provide to your fellow students thinking about getting involved in a KIC project? Who wants to take that? James, go for it.
Yeah, okay, I'll dive in. Dive in head first. Be as active in the conversations as you can. Like when you have time with the experts in the field, when you have time with AWS or eSafety or whoever the partner is, be as active in the conversation as you can. Listen. So something that a piece of advice I was given once around academic seminars is spend the entire seminar looking for a question you can ask. So when someone else is talking, listen to what they're saying to try and find a question you can ask. You're going to be a much more active listener, and you're going to get a lot more out of the program if you do that. Great.
Awesome feedback. Excellent. Jovin, Tracy, anything extra?
Just sign up. You may not.
And I think really appreciate your time, and I'll throw back to Kai to sign off. But I think really interestingly, you had this wonderful ability to have two industry partners to play with, AWS guiding you through the process, but also ESafety Commission. So you sort of get a double whammy of that exposure to the market and how these things need to roll. So thank you, and thanks for taking the time today as well. Kai, back to you to sign off.
Yes, a huge thank you. And it's amazing how those two, for you working with those two partners has created this ability for you to articulate so clearly and accessibly this information, which is much needed. Thank you so much for being here with us. And thank you to all who have joined us. That toolkit, I believe information is made available on an end slide, or we'll email it to you. Somebody will confirm. And we hope that you all have a very safe, eSafe rest of your day and week. And I think there's a slide popping up now with those resources that you can head to for further information about eSafety. And there we go, the toolkit. And just a huge thank you to both Matts as well, Matt Squared.
And to you, Kai, thank you for your wonderful emceeing, and to the students. Really appreciate everyone's work today. Well done.